If you looked up the word strange in the dictionary, you would probably see a picture of Wolfgang Schmidt. Out of retaliation for a strained relationship with his mother, a 7-year-old Wolfgang went into her dresser and put on her bra and panties. Then he would urinate and defecate in the underwear on purpose, as this apparently gave him sexual pleasure. He routinely did this until his mom noticed his thieving ways. She shamed him and locked her dresser drawers, but Wolfgang would then steal women's clothes from landfills and dumpsters for the sole purpose of soiling them for sexual arousal. Even more alarming, Wolfgang eventually became a policeman as an adult, but he was fired after celebrating Hitler's birthday. He often drifted from job to job, drunkenly roaming the streets in women's clothing. But soon, his obsession with women's underwear evolved, as simply taking from clotheslines or landfills wasn't enough to satisfy him. So he decided to take his unusual behaviors a step further, as 6 people, including a 3-month-old baby, fell victim to a man the German media dubbed the Pink Giant. Welcome to History's Biggest Villains. Wolfgang Schmidt was born on October 5, 1966, in London, East Germany. His father was a truck driver, and he taught his son to be non-confrontational when faced with aggression. This made sense considering that his mother was a domineering woman who issued frequent beatings and showed little affection towards her children. He was an average student in school, and he endured constant bullying. Due to the excessive amount of time he spent around his mother, Wolfgang developed an unusual obsession with her, basically wanting to be her. He had ideations of wanting to be a girl as young as 3 years old, and by the time he was 7, he experimented with cross-dressing, but with a bizarre twist. He raided his mother's dresser and put on her underwear, bras, and stockings. Then he urinated and defecated in them, as this brought him sexual pleasure. After his mom found the dirty clothes in the barn, she forbade Wolfgang from playing outside with the other kids. She tried to take him to the doctor, but after they left without a diagnosis, she started locking the dressers. But Wolfgang resorted to scavenging through dumpsters and landfills for discarded bras and panties. These unusual behaviors continued as he got older, with the most disgusting being his tendency to smear feces all over his body. Wolfgang became so wrapped up in his fetish that school, work, and other social events were second on the list to the daily search for bras and panties to soil. He eventually dropped out of school in the 10th grade. In 1985, a 19-year-old Wolfgang applied for the uniformed police. He climbed to the rank of Unterofficer, and he was recently switched from train supervisor to police duty in 1989. But in late April, he and 3 other officers were fired after they hosted a private neo-Nazi meeting celebrating Hitler's 100th birthday. His work history was pretty checkered after this, as he briefly had a job as a crane operator, but was fired due to multiple absences. He also had several manual labor jobs, the last as a farmhand in an orchard. Wolfgang often showed up drunk, stole workplace items, and fought with coworkers. He had a girlfriend, but they broke up after a relative found several knives in his bedroom. To vent his frustrations, he would walk through the forest while wearing women's clothes, becoming frustrated at the reactions he got from the female onlookers. Now feeling humiliated by the women who joked at him while he was cross-dressing, he chose to lash out in the worst way possible. On October 24th, 1989, he broke into the home of 51-year-old Eldertraut Nixdorf in Dietz, with his only mission to find underwear. The woman saw him from the garden and ran at him with a rake. Wolfgang quickly overpowered her and forced her to the ground. He strangled her, then beat her to death with a hammer. He had sex with the corpse, then wrapped the body in a blanket, but he was spotted by a neighbor and quickly fled. A large shoe print of an NVA-issued boot was found at the scene, as these boots were only worn by soldiers and police officers. Stricken by the grief of his wife's death, Eldertraut's husband ingested pesticides and died in 1990. Wolfgang laid low until May 24th, when he attacked 45-year-old Christina Jukes near a garbage dump in Furch. He strangled her to death with an electric cable. Then he again had sex with the corpse before leaving the scene. Her body was discovered the next day by her husband, who worked on the site as a groundskeeper. Pink women's underwear were found at the scene, but they were soiled by feces. On July 9th, he struck again, nearly beating a homeless woman to death with a club over trash in a landfill. A few days later, he attacked 58-year-old Edith Weber at another landfill near Wust. He had hit her several times with a wooden pole, leaving her for dead before construction workers discovered her and called an ambulance. Wolfgang didn't attack again until March 13, 1991, as he was walking through the woods between Borkheide and Neuendorf and spotted 34-year-old Inge Fischer. She was beaten and kicked before being dragged off the path, raped, and then killed with a knife to the throat. Her body wasn't found until a week later, but police found her underwear to be replaced with pink underwear, along with the discovery of even more underwear and porno magazines buried in ditches. Police linked this murder to the Nixdorf and the Jukes murders, so they were now looking for one assailant. Only 9 days later, Wolfgang committed his most heinous act when he stumbled upon 44-year-old Tamara Petroskaka and her 3-month-old son Stanislav during a walk in the woods in Belitz. He grabbed Tamara, hog-tying and gagging her with 2 pieces of underwear. He then grabbed Stanislav and crushed the baby's skull against a tree stump, and shoe prints on his clothes indicate that the child was also stomped and kicked. He then continued raping Tamara before strangling her to death with a bra and switching out her panties. A search of the crime scene revealed enough hidden underwear stashes to fill 5 trash bags. On April 6, 1991, Wolfgang attacked 2 12-year-old girls in Sputendorf, trying to stab both of them with a knife, but the girls scratched his face and were able to escape. They gave a detailed description to the police, and he now had a composite drawing with a reward of 20,000 Deutsch marks. Incensed that he missed out on another chance to kill, Wolfgang broke into the home of Talita Brewer, fatally strangling her before raping her corpse and fleeing the scene. Her body wasn't discovered for 2 weeks, and with the clothing drawers being rummaged through, this murder was connected with the others. In July, Wolfgang was illegally camping in a forest near Smirsky, publicly masturbating near a tent while wearing a bra over his shirt. He was spotted by jogger Mike Klein, who had noticed underwear hanging in the branches. Klein recognized him as the suspect on the police sketch, also seeing a number of knives in the tent, and drove to Brandenburg and Der Havel to inform police. The area was put under surveillance, as the precinct worried that their culprit might escape an immediate police response. Klein often returned to the area to watch the police operation, sometimes accompanied by his friend Andreas Seigel. On August 1st, Klein and Seigel coincidentally came across Wolfgang camping in a different part of the woods, and they seized the opportunity by pretending to be foresters and coaxing him into the covered flatbed of their truck, supposedly to clean up the litter from the other campsite. Upon arrival, Wolfgang was overpowered by the SEK officers on watch duty, handcuffed to a tree, and transported to Potsdam, where he committed to 6 murders to Volker Kelm, the lead detective in the case since 1989. Schmidt's trial commenced on October 20th, 1992. On December 1st, he was sentenced to 15 years, followed by indefinite detention at a psychiatric hospital in Brandenburg and Der Havel. Forensic psychiatrist Wilfried Rasch argued in favor of a punishment with involuntary commitment after diagnosing Schmidt with having a sexual pathological development with paraphilic, coprophilic, transvestite, and sadistic elements, resulting in diminished responsibility. Journalist Germard Maus criticized press coverage for dehumanizing Schmidt as a spawn of hell, finding the response excessive, even for the magnitude of the crime, as this affected people around him like his fiancée, who had an abortion before the trial due to public pressure following an open campaign entitled "Abort the Child of the Pink Giant." The campaign claimed that Schmidt's violent impulses were genetic, arguing that the child would be at risk for inheriting similar defects. In prison, Wolfgang began identifying as a transgender woman. Press footage from 1997 showed that he had received access to women's clothing and makeup and was allowed to decorate the cell with plush animals and magazine cutouts. An application for a name change to Beat Schmidt was met by the court in 2001, and since 2009, he has undergone hormone treatment for gender reassignment. In 2010, he was investigated for raping and causing another transgender inmate to commit suicide. In July 2013, his restrictions were loosened for unsupervised walks on the facility's green space. Further privileges for day trips into Brandenburg and Der Havel were briefly granted following first steps forward towards therapy, but they were revoked after the media published CCTV images of him buying pornographic magazines at the gas station. I don't really know what to say about this. I can't really explain the obsession with finding women's underwear and pooping and peeing in them. I can't explain that to you. I really don't know. I don't know, man. It's just weird. You want to be your mom so bad, but then you hate women because you kill women. All your targets are women. I don't know, man. I can't really explain this. This is ridiculous. But thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate y'all for the support. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Hit that subscribe button to my channel. Thank you. I'm out. Peace.